It was around 2 o'clock in the morning. I pushed open the door of that hotel suite and the city was there through the glass, all of it glowing like nothing in the world was wrong. The lights were low. His tie was on the floor. And he was sitting on the edge of that bed with his head in his hands, like a man who had been fighting himself for so long that he had finally just stopped. When he heard the door, he looked up. His eyes were red. Not from crying. More like someone who had been thinking too hard for too long and had finally run out of room to hide from the answer. He looked at me for a moment. Then he said it. Real quiet. Like it had been sitting in his chest for months and there was nowhere left to keep it. If your brother finds out I'm in love with you, I lose everything I've ever built. And I don't even care anymore. I just stood there. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I didn't know what to do with my heart. My name is Imani Brooks. And I need you to stay with me because before you decide who the villain is in this story, you need to hear exactly how we got to that room. How a girl from a Brooklyn walk-up ended up being the secret that one of the most powerful men in the country couldn't keep. Beautiful family, this is Danito Stories. Where the quietest moments break the hardest. This is where things begin to change. I need to start at the end so you understand what was at stake at every single moment in between. 6 weeks from that hotel room. It was a gala. His company's charity event in Manhattan. Reporters lined up outside. Cameras everywhere. Every person who mattered in Weston Hale's world, standing in one room, waiting. And I was standing at the bottom of those steps in a red dress he had sent to my door that morning, my heart hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. He was already there. Waiting. No smile. Just his eyes, searching for mine the second the car door opened. He held out his hand. I took it. And we walked up those stairs together for the first time, in front of the entire world. But to understand why that moment meant everything, you have to go back to where it all started. I'm 24. Born and raised in Brooklyn, third floor walk-up where the radiator banged through the winters so loud you couldn't hear yourself think. My mama worked 2 jobs my entire childhood. Hospital cafeteria during the day, cleaning offices in Manhattan at night. She never complained. You couldn't hear it in her words, but you could always see it in her shoulders. That particular kind of tiredness that doesn't go away just because you slept. I have one brother, Trey. 6 years older than me. After our daddy left, and I say that plain because there's no gentler way to say it, Trey stepped up before anybody asked him to. Walked me to school. Helped with my homework. Scared off boys who talked to me when I was 15 and didn't know any better yet. He was the focused one. The one who saw a way out and decided to build it himself, brick by brick. He clawed his way up through construction work and scholarships and sheer will. By the time he was 30, my brother was one of the most respected real estate developers on the East Coast. He bought my mama a house in New Jersey and told her to quit both her jobs in the same week. I'll never forget her face when he handed her those keys. Like she finally had permission to just breathe. I went a different direction. I loved buildings, the shape of them, the way light changes inside a room depending on the hour. I got my master's in architecture and had been fighting for my place in rooms that didn't always make space for someone who looks like me. That's who I was. Now here's where it gets dangerous. Weston Hale. White. 32. Old money from Connecticut. His grandfather built a hotel chain in the 1950s that nearly collapsed twice. By the time Weston inherited the mess of it in his late 20s, the industry gave him maybe 3 years before it folded completely. He turned it into one of the most celebrated luxury hotel brands in the world in 4 years. Magazine covers. The business press called him a genius. The youngest billionaire in American hospitality. He had been my brother's best friend since college. Freshman roommates by accident, inseparable by choice ever since. I had known Weston Hale since I was a teenager. Thanksgivings, Christmases. That one summer he stayed with us 2 weeks because his own family situation was, in his words, complicated. But he never really saw me. To him I was Trey's little sister. The girl in the corner with the headphones in. The girl who burned her hand on the stove that one Christmas and went red trying to pretend it didn't hurt. I was furniture. I was in the background. Until I wasn't. The phone call came on a Tuesday. I was in my bed-stewy apartment eating cereal for dinner when Trey's name lit up my screen. He didn't say hello, that was always Trey. He just said, "I'm pitching a big one. Mixed-use development in Miami. I need a young architect on the team. Someone hungry." I asked who the investor was. There was a pause. Then, Weston. I sat down on my couch and held the phone and didn't say anything for a moment. The project was the kind you don't get offered twice at my age. But something about Weston being in the picture made my stomach do a thing I wasn't ready to look at yet. I called Trey back 3 days later and told him I was in. First mistake. Or the first brave thing. I still haven't decided. The first meeting was at Weston's office in Midtown. Glasses everywhere. The kind of building where the receptionist looks at your shoes before she looks at your face. I walked in with my navy blazer on, my hair freshly braided, my portfolio in both hands. I had practiced what I was going to say in the mirror that morning like I was getting ready for battle. He was already in the conference room when I walked through the door. He stood up too fast and almost knocked his coffee clear off the table. He caught it before it spilled. But his ears went red. I remember that detail with absolute clarity. And then our eyes locked. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. Longer than they had any business being. I told myself I was imagining it. Men like him don't look at women like me with anything real behind it. I told myself that the whole drive home. I almost believed it. Trey was on speakerphone from Atlanta the entire meeting, barking instructions, redirecting, filling every silence. And every time Trey couldn't see, Weston was looking at me. I went home that night and stared at my ceiling for a very long time. Over the next 3 weeks, something shifted. Slow at first. Then not slow at all. Trey was traveling constantly. Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston. The project needed someone on site in New York. That someone became me and Weston. Alone in a conference room more evenings than I want to count. Thai food delivered in. He always remembered I didn't like cilantro. He started asking me things nobody in his world had ever bothered to ask about my mama, about my childhood, about why I chose architecture over something safer. He listened like the answer actually mattered to him. I started laughing too easily around him. I'd catch myself mid-laugh and try to pull it back. But I could tell by the way he watched me he'd noticed. He'd been noticing for a while. And then came the night everything almost broke open. It was a Thursday. Late. He looked at me across a conference table covered in blueprints and said, "Come up to the roof. I want to show you something." It was one of his Manhattan hotels. The roof had a view that made you feel like the entire city is yours. Lights in every direction. The night air is warm and still. He started pointing out buildings in the distance, telling me their histories, when they were built, what they used to be. His voice was low and careful, the way he got when something actually interested him. I turned to respond, to tell him something about one of the structures, and I realized he wasn't looking at the buildings anymore. He was looking at me. Neither of us moved. I could feel the distance between us getting smaller the way you feel a storm before the rain starts. His eyes dropped for just a fraction of a second to my lips, and his hand lifted barely, like he was about to reach up and touch the side of my face. Then he stepped back. He said quietly, "I'm sorry." I'm sorry. I went home. I did not sleep. A week later, it was raining when he showed up at my apartment. No driver. No security. Just him, standing in my doorway at 10 p.m., soaking wet from the street, looking like a man who had made a decision he couldn't unmake. I almost didn't buzz him up. But I did. He came dripping on my hallway floor and he said, "Imani, I have tried. I've tried so hard to stop thinking about you. And I cannot." I told him to leave. He stood there. He told me about Trey, how my brother had pulled him back when his mother died in their sophomore year. How Trey was the only real family he had chosen for himself. "And I'm standing here," he said, "about to betray the only real thing I've ever had for you." And I'm still standing here. I told him to leave again. My voice cracked on the last word. He left. 2 days later, I was the one who knocked on his door. I told him before he could say anything, I was raised to never be anybody's secret. He nodded. He understood. But I can't lie about what I feel either. And then he kissed me. It wasn't fast. It wasn't desperate. It was slow and deliberate and almost heartbroken. The way you kiss someone when part of you already knows the cost. His hand came up and held the side of my face so carefully, like I was something he had been afraid of breaking. When it ended, his forehead came to rest against mine and neither of us moved. The rain was still going outside. The whole world had gone quiet. I stayed that night. We didn't sleep together. We just talked about his mother, about my father leaving, about what it feels like to watch your parents carry weight you're too small to help with. When the sun started coming up through the window, I was still in his arms, fully dressed. And I had never felt more exposed in my life. For the next 2 months, we existed in a world that only we could see. Hotels booked under different names. Long drives upstate where nobody recognized either of us. Phone calls that started at midnight and stopped when the sky started going gray. He sent flowers with no card so my neighbors couldn't talk. He gave me a thin gold necklace with a tiny key pendant. I told my mama I'd treated myself. There were moments inside all that hiding that I will keep for the rest of my life. One night in a little cabin north of the city, the power went out. We sat on the porch in the dark and listened to the rain, and he pulled me into his side and pressed his lips to my temple and just held me there without saying anything. No phones. No world. Just us. I remember thinking, this is what it would feel like to be chosen out loud. And then I remembered nobody knew we were there. If you're feeling this story, like and share it so others can find it. Comment where you're watching from now. Back to the story. Loving someone in the dark is the loneliest kind of loving there is. Every time Trey called, my stomach dropped. Every Sunday at my mama's house, Weston sitting next to my brother, me across the table, I felt like I was disappearing a little more each week. Shrinking to fit inside the shape of the secret. Trey started noticing before either of us realized it. He was never a stupid man. He began noticing I was smiling at my phone too often. He noticed Weston was distracted in meetings, missing small details he never used to miss. One Sunday at dinner, Trey leaned back in his chair and looked at Weston the way he used to look at me when I'd done something I wasn't supposed to, and he already knew it. "Are you seeing somebody?" Weston laughed. It was the worst lie I have ever heard a grown man tell. "Nah, man. You know me. Married to the work." I watched my brother's jaw tighten. He didn't say another word. But he didn't believe it. I could see it in the stillness behind his eyes, patient, calculating, waiting. I knew right then. We had run out of time. It was a photograph that finished it. Long lens. Outside a private restaurant in the Hamptons. Me half-turned, getting into the back of his car. You couldn't see my full face. But you could see the braids. The necklace. Trey saw it before he'd had his morning coffee. He called me. He didn't raise his voice. That was the part that scared me most. His voice was completely calm when he said, "Tell me that's not you." I couldn't. The line went quiet. Then he hung up. He walked straight to Weston's building. Past security. Up to the top floor. Into the office. Shut the door behind him. I heard the rest in pieces later. Trey accused him of using me. Of using his access and his money and his friendship to take something that wasn't his to take. Weston told him flatly, "I'm in love with her." Trey punched him. They didn't speak for 2 weeks. I didn't speak to either of them. I went home to Brooklyn and I cried in my mama's lap like I was 9 years old again. She didn't say a word for a long time. She just stroked my hair the way she used to when I had a fever. Then, very softly, she asked me one question. "Baby, does that man see you? Or does he see somebody he gets to keep hidden?" I couldn't answer her. Not that night. But that question didn't leave me. It followed me to work. It followed me to bed. It sat at the breakfast table every morning. Because she was right. As long as I was a secret, I wasn't really loved. I was wanted. And there is a difference, a quiet, devastating difference between those two things. My mama understood that without ever having to explain it. I went to Weston that weekend. I stood in front of him and I said it clearly without flinching. Either you walk next to me in the daylight at a real event, in front of your world and in front of my brother, or this ends today. I'm not going to be the woman you hide. Not for anyone. Not even for you. He stood at the window for a long time. I could see him going through every angle, every cost, every calculation. Then he turned and he looked at me with something I hadn't seen on his face before. Something settled. Give me 1 week. I almost didn't give it to him. But I did. 7 days later, the gala. That afternoon, a black car pulled up outside my building. The driver brought up a garment bag. Inside, a deep red gown, floor length, the kind I never would have bought for myself in 100 years. A note in his handwriting tucked inside. Walk in with me. Walk out with me. No more hiding. I sat on my bed in that dress for 20 minutes. Heart pounding. Hands shaking. Thinking about every hidden hotel room. Every silent Sunday dinner. Every morning I woke up and wondered how much longer I could keep this up. I went. He was at the bottom of the steps in a black tuxedo. No smile. Just his eyes, finding mine the instant the car door opened. He held out his hand. I took it. We walked up those stairs together. Camera flashes so fast I couldn't see straight. Reporters calling out questions neither of us answered. I felt the crowd shift when we entered the room, that particular stillness that falls over a space when something unexpected happens. When someone steps outside the lines everyone agreed on without saying so. He didn't let go of my hand. Not once. Later in the evening, he walked me quietly to a window that looked out over the city, the same city we'd spent months hiding in, and he pulled me close, one hand at the small of my back, and kissed me slowly. Right there. In front of everyone. And I felt for the first time in months like I could breathe all the way down. The headline the next morning read, Hale steps out with mystery woman. I was a mystery for about 6 hours. Then the internet did what it always does. The hardest part wasn't the headlines. The hardest part was waiting for Trey to call. He didn't. Not for 2 weeks. Then one Saturday morning, a knock at my door. I opened it and there he was. My brother. Standing in my hallway in a hoodie and jeans, looking tired in a way I had never seen on him before. Like something he'd been holding had finally gotten too heavy. He came in. Sat on my couch. Didn't speak for a full minute. Then, I wasn't just mad it was him. I was mad because my baby sister was old enough to be loved by a man like that, and I didn't see it coming. I started crying. He started crying. I hadn't seen my brother cry since our daddy left. He held me for a long time. He said he was sorry. He said he just wanted me safe. I told him I knew. I told him I'd always known. He met Weston for coffee a few days later. I wasn't there. They told me afterward it was awkward and quiet, neither one quite sure where to begin. But by the end of it, Trey looked Weston dead in the eye and said, "If you ever make her cry, best friend or not, I will end you." And Weston, without missing a beat, "I'd help you." That's when I knew it was going to be okay. People ask me all the time how a girl like me ended up with a man like him. They ask in comments, in interviews, at events when they think I can't hear. The answer is simple. He didn't lift me into his world. I walked into it on my own 2 feet. I earned every door I ever stood in front of. And he was just smart enough when it mattered to hold it open. People ask me all the time how a girl like me ended up with a man like him. They ask in comments, in interviews, at events when they think I can't hear. The answer is simple. He didn't lift me into his world. I walked into it on my own 2 feet. I earned every door I ever stood in front of. And he was just smart enough when it mattered to hold it open. I'm not his secret anymore. I'm not anybody's secret. And if you have been carrying a love like this one, a love the world told you was too complicated, too different, too much, I need you to hear something before you go. Because this next part, this is for you. If you have ever loved someone the world told you you shouldn't, someone from a different block, a different world, a different tax bracket, a different side of everything, I want you to hear this clearly. You don't owe the world a small love. You don't owe anyone a quiet love. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit inside somebody else's idea of what makes sense. Love loud. Love in the daylight. Love standing up straight. That is the only kind worth keeping. And listen, before you leave this story, I want you to drop something in the comments about this story. Tell just one word. Just one. The word that describes the love you have been afraid to say out loud. One word. Drop it down there. I read every single one. And if this story touched something in you, subscribe now. If it reminded you of someone, if it made you feel seen in a way you weren't expecting today, share this with that person. Right now. Don't wait. Just share it. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone know they are not alone in what they are feeling. Love loud. Love in the daylight. Love standing up straight. That is the only kind worth keeping.